Oh God, I need to call you Twinkle and not Tina.
No, no, you can call me Tina. You can't call me Twinkle. I'll wonder what to do.
Okay, so I'll start with it and then shift to it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Because
No,
I
no,
have
then
to
if you're going to
introduce
call
you
me
and
Twinkle,
then tell
sorry.
more
No, if you're
Tina.
going to call me Twinkle, you have to call me Twinkle G with respect. You can't call me just Twinkle.
Twinkle K you are, not G.
Yeah, or now you can call me Master Twinkle. How about that?
Ooh, not bad at all.
Not
Nice.
bad.
But yeah. Um, Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sonali's Book Club. Today we are in conversation with Twinkle Khanna. Uh, Her book of the month on the book club has been Welcome to Paradise, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation with her. But let me introduce her a bit. I'm so used to knowing her, and it feels a bit strange to call her Twinkle because I've always called her Tina. I'll go back to that, but let me first be formal and proper when she's come to Sonali's book club and do the proper formal introduction. So, Twinkle
It's taken me 4 books to reach Sonali's book club. So yeah, it's been a while. Thank you, Sonali, for
why
letting me
have
come
you
on
not
your
been on the book club before? And this time also, let me tell you, I had to beg her. I said, Twinkle, can I have your book on it? No, 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 not this month. Let me do it next month, etc., etc. But yeah, so it's not, it's the other way around. I had to, like, Twinkle, please, can you come on my book club? But yeah. So, Twinkle Khanna is an Indian author, columnist, interior designer, film producer, and former actress. In 2015, Khanna released her first nonfiction book, Mrs. Funny Bones, which was declared a bestseller, making Khanna India's highest-selling woman writer that year. Khanna's second book, The Legend of Lakshmi Prasad, a collection of short stories, one of which was based on social entrepreneur Arunachalam Muruganathan, was later made into national award-winning feature film Padman. With this, with the focus on dispelling taboos around menstruation, it was produced under Khanna's production house, Mrs. Funnybones Movies, which was set up in 2016. Her third book, Pajamas Are Forgiving, by Juggernaut Books, made her the highest selling female author in India in 2018. Her fourth book, Welcome to Paradise, was released in 2023 and received critical acclaim. And guess what? It was number one. It was number one in fiction on the Nielsen book scan and cemented its position for number one on Crossword Bookstore bestseller list also within just a few weeks.
बस कर मेरी माँ बहुत thank you very much for this very fine introduction. Sounds very
Since
funny coming from you.
2022, this for me is the highlight of Tina's life because hats off to her. I don't know how she's done it. I so admire her for this. In 2022, Twinkle Khanna went on to pursue her master's in fiction writing at the Goldsmiths University of London and completed her degree in 2023. In addition to this, Twinkle also launched Tweak India, a bilingual digital media platform for women and supports a number of causes. So, yeah, that's quite a
And can I please
impress.
say that when I was launching Tweak, I asked Sonali, can you just come and stand with a few balloons and say Tweak? That's all you have to do. And she didn't blink any of her false eyelashes, not even one. And she was right there. And she said, Tweak, tweak, tweak. And we are friends. So this is going to be very informal. And I will pull her leg and she will pull mine. And I don't know how serious this particular book club conversation is going
I'm
to be.
already reading it because pulling my leg is a constant. And before we start, I think I should share. Twinkle has been my sister-in-law's close friend. But even more than that, Twinkle for me has always been my husband Goldie's friend. And it was crazy when I was dating Goldie. Twinkle and Goldie would fight like cats and dogs. And it was like I would actually start getting upset that what is this? And they would fight like cats and dogs. And after 5 minutes, they were talking like best friends again. And I was like, what is happening over here? And they're like, yeah, we've always been like this. So they've grown up together, and that's how they've always been. So, in a way, I would say, though I have done a movie with Tina. Do you remember the movie, Tina?
Yes, I remember some. So we are both Capricorns, but I'm not diplomatic, and Sonali is very diplomatic. We were sitting in between a shot and at a table, and there was this man who was droning on and on. I think I told him off once or twice, and Sonali didn't do anything. Sonali will never tell anybody, oh, you're boring me, or shut up, or whatever. She just took an ashtray off the table, dropped it and shattered it on the ground. So that man was also stunned and taken aback, and he stood up and the conversation ended. So that was a very, very effective diplomatic way of ending, boring conversations. Please learn from her.
But I have to say that the only person in all these years of being on film sets or otherwise, Tina is the only one who has caught me in the act and understood what I was doing. Nobody ever has ever got it. I was so discreet, but she caught
Yeah.
me, and it was like, oh my God, yeah. But so yeah, we did a movie together. We had a great time. I discovered Tina and her sense of humor and loved it. Dark, dark sense of humor, but so much of depth. And as you can see that in her writing also. So there is this Tina who has her claws out, and she can be sharp, and she has a dark sense of humor, which a lot of times people don't get and think she's being mean, which she's being also a lot of times. She can be really mean also, but she's
That
mean with
was when I
great
was
sense of
younger.
humor, and you have to forgive her for it. It's amazing. I love her brain. So bright, and she was always into writing. She did her interiors, she did candles, she did so many creative things. Very, very creative person. But I remember she always said, I wish I could have gone to the university. I wish I could have gotten a degree. I wish I could have studied more. And we would talk about it, and I said, yeah, I wish too. Both of us wished for it, but she did it. Me, can't do it. Takes too much concentration, too much focus. I don't have it. She's done it. So hats off to you. You did it. Both of us spoke about it, but you did it. I appreciate it so much. Really. Congratulations.
I think you had your own journey and you had great challenges that you had to overcome. And those challenges, each one of us is given what we can face. I don't know if I would have been able to face it as bravely as you did. I remember when you had this whole, I think it was sort of, what was it? Put on my sunshine or be my sunshine, or there was something like that.
Sunshine, yes.
Yes. And I would look at those posts, and even though I was not in your position, it gave me hope. And I would look at that and say, if she can battle these things and be so optimistic, then, what am I moaning about my stupid problems? So you did that for a lot of people. And don't undersell yourself just because this is your show. You have been incredibly brave. You've been an inspiration. I was inspired by you. So, yeah.
Tina, I am keeping this with me because Tina praising me so much, it's not happened. I'm sending it to
I'm
Srishti.
telling you, I've become old. This is what
I'm
comes with
sending
age.
it to your sister Rinky. I have to send it to everybody and say, look at this. Tina is being all sentimental and
Yeah,
proper,
yeah.
and actually, yeah.
When you come to this stage, so you said that I was mean, and I do believe that, my words were very sharp, are very sharp, and luckily now I can distill it in writing. And at one point in my life, I thought that I wasn't really mean. I was being honest. And I felt that that was a trait that I didn't want to, give up, that I'm being honest. And as I got older, I realized that it's better to be kind than to be honest. And so a lot of that sort of, well, sharpness or observations or what I wanted to tell people, I've decided that they are perfectly fine the way they are. And who am I to judge them, or who am I to correct them? So, yeah, I think, sort of all the white
Yeah,
hair
I
on my
agree
head
with
has
you.
done that.
I agree with you. The word mean is probably just an easy way to explain it, but I get exactly what you're saying. And I think that's the reason also somewhere, uh, as colleagues, and then later we got closer as friends. Okay, not besties, but always in a great, always a great equation. And I think that is also because somewhere I always got you in the sense of I always knew that it came out or might sound mean or whatever, but it was never meant like that. And
Again and again, you're saying this
thought
mean
you
thing.
were
But
so funny. It was
I
so
was mean to Goldie because he's my childhood friend. I wasn't just mean to random people. All the people watching this are going to say that I've just been walking around and saying nonsense to people. Actually, yeah, there was a point when I did that as well.
I think we should stop that here. This much of
Okay.
getting into personal space is good enough. There are a lot of other things that I will tell her, but not at this point of time. But yes, I always admired that sharp wit. Let's not call, I'm sorry about the word mean. I take it back. It's called sharp wit. And very
You
few
can you
people
can
have it.
edit it. Now,
I
since this is
admire
your
it.
show, will you kindly cut some parts out where you have just blabbered on?
We will.
Okay.
do that.
And
But tell me, I mean, we can keep chatting about this, but I want to, what should I start with? Let me start with your earlier work, and, uh, what is it? You've always been a creative person, like I mentioned before, be it interior designing, be it, you did candles, be it setting up of Tweak. There's been so much of creativity in you, but what made you start writing?
I was always writing. It's reading and writing. So the apocryphal tales of my childhood, or rather, my mother claims that I could read fluently by the time I'm 3. I don't believe that. I think she just says that to make my sister feel bad because my sister apparently started reading when she was 5. But I think books have always been part of my life, and I was reading incessantly, and I used to write very bad poetry when I was young, terrible poetry. Then in my 20s, I wrote half a novel.
Mhm.
And I think that that part of me has always been alive. And then for, I guess, I don't know how many years, almost, maybe 2 decades, I didn't write anything, not even a diary entry. And then I got an opportunity because a friend of mine who was moving from one paper to the other wanted to better her career. And she decided that she wants to have, sort of well-known people writing columns. And I told her, I said, I don't know if I can write. And she says, oh, you read so much you can. And I said, so many people watch cricket. It doesn't mean that they can play. But I did start writing. And once I began, I realized that I had so much to say.
Yeah.
And the columns, I didn't expect that kind of success. It just took off and it had, it gained sort of momentum on its own. And that was it. And that's how it all started.
Like you said, you were always writing. Do you mean to say that while you were shooting and when you were on film sets, you were not writing, not even a diary? It would have been
Nothing.
really funny. That diary if you would have kept it, would have been amazing. I'm sure
It
there's
would
a
have
secret
been,
diary. Tina, come on.
no,
There has to be a secret
I
diary.
don't, but as you, I think probably know, I have a very sharp memory and very, very sharp observation skills. So I do remember a lot of things, and bizarre things would happen on film sets. We worked with one actor. I'm not going to name him, but he would keep canceling shootings. He would come late and he would do various things. And once he gave me this excuse of why he could not come that day, and he said that he had a problem with his uterus. Now, I cannot forget these things. I don't have to write a diary to remember these things. And, at some point in some book, there will be a character who will have a problem with his uterus, though I don't know if he really had a uterus. I mean, who knows? So I think that time in the movie business, I was not writing. I was reading because luckily we didn't have phones. I'm so happy that we grew up in an era where there weren't phones because a lot of our creative energies would have been dispelled. Right now, I almost feel like I'm creative despite my phone. I
Yeah.
have to hide my phone. If I'm writing, not only do I put it on airplane mode, but I hide it under a blanket because even the visual of that phone is distracting.
Oh my God. Yeah, I can understand that.
And in between shots, I was reading, I was knitting sometimes, but
Mhm.
I was always doing something. And I think part of that comes, and my grandmother is a big part of Welcome to Paradise, and part of that comes from her. She always told me that busy fingers still the mind. And she was always doing something with her hands. It was crochet, knitting, embroidery, folding clothes. And I
Mm.
think I've got that habit from her. Sometimes, even when I'm on a plane and I feel restless, I feel like I need to write, and I need to write with my hands. I'll take a pen and I'll just, I don't know, make a to-do list, but it calms me down.
Yeah.
So I guess though I've been writing for almost, I mean, over 10 years,
Mhm.
I think it was really in the pandemic that I realized that I'm a writer and I could call myself a writer. And strangely enough, it was at a point when I was unable to write. It was the first time I had writer's block, and I felt I can't write and I can't process the world around me. And I don't understand what's happening around me because I'm not writing about it. And that means that I'm actually inherently a writer.
Wow. I mean, after all these popular books and, being the India's number one female author, is that a thing? Female author? It is. It's a.
Apparently, it is because even here, the men outsell us. Well, two men outsell me. Um, and I interviewed one of them. And then he
Why does
said
it
to
have
me,
to be a female author? Why is it not just an author?
because I think there is So it's a very strange dichotomy that women read books by male and female authors, and
Mhm.
I have a feeling that men very rarely read books by female authors. They
I
read
don't believe
other
you.
men.
I know many men who read your books. I know that for a fact. So,
I don't really have that many men coming up to me and saying that they read my columns, yes, but I don't have many men coming up to me and saying we read your book. It's largely, other women. Um, so yeah, I think there is that little bit of a difference, and I don't think that's just India. I think that's globally.
okay, okay. Yeah. But like you said that, from the film sets, the various characters that have inhabited our lives on film sets, they come in as different characters maybe. But is there ever a time when you feel like you could write something at that time, from that time, that period of your life, things that would come out? When do you think you'll be able to write that?
I think when
Or
I'm
would you
80,
even ever want to write about it?
no, I think I'll probably want to write that when I'm 80. I'm about to get Alzheimer's and I don't want to forget and I want to leave a record of what happened. You know, it's very strange when we talk about memoirs and we talk about nonfiction. I would go so far to say that there is a lot more honesty and truth in fiction than there is in nonfiction. And if you write a memoir, it will have to be filled with a lot of falsehoods because
Yeah.
you're really not going to tell them everything that happened. It's not just your life, it's the people around you.
Yeah.
And so I prefer, taking that truth and putting it in fiction, disguising it. It's there, it's my truth, but I'm not throwing other people under the bus, nor am I throwing myself.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, but tell me, this is your fourth book now?
Yeah.
And so what are the characters from all these books that you identify with the most?
It's very difficult to say because all of these people have bits and pieces of my thought process and the way that I, look at life, my perspectives. I can't say that there's one person. And even if the person would be, well, supposedly negative, I still have to get inside their head. For example, in Welcome to Paradise, in the first story, there's, this brother who's a drug addict. And when I was writing that, when I finished the story, I looked at it and I felt that he's, not fleshed out completely. He feels like a cardboard cutout. And why is that? And then I realized I have been unable to get inside his mind. So I started doing a lot of research about what goes on in the mind of a drug addict. What is that life like? How do they get into it? And because I understood him from the inside out, I could breathe life into him. But I was also able to identify with that feeling of getting hooked on to something and needing it where everything else pales in comparison. So if you're asking me, who do you identify with? I have to identify with all of them to be able to write about them.
Politically correct reply, Tina. This was
It's
so
the
politically
truth.
correct. No, it was
It
so
is the
politically
truth.
correct.
Yeah, I'm telling you that I'm identifying with a drug addict, and you're telling me that's politically correct.
Okay, fine. I give this to you. Let me believe this, and we'll keep a few things there. So, like I spoke about and said that I admire you so much that you've just finished your master's in fiction writing from Goldsmiths University. It's a prestigious university. And you were just telling me that you've been shortlisted for a prize. And congratulations for that. And it's amazing that you've been shortlisted. Um, Welcome to Paradise is your first book after this completing this
Mhm.
or while doing this
Yeah.
master's. What is the change that you feel? Do you feel did you find any change in the process of writing? Did you find anything different inside you when you were doing it? Was there any change?
I definitely feel that no one can teach you how to write,
Hmm.
but it really helped me analyze other people's work and my own. And
Hmm.
before I did this master's, I did online courses. I did two 6 months worth of courses at Oxford. They were, 3 months each, 10 hours a week. And there also I got a lot of scaffolding.
Hmm.
So basically, what would happen, I think, in academic sort of structure is you figure out what is working, what is not working, what is the shape of stories, the analytical side of storytelling, crafting a narrative. And I had to do a dissertation it was, and what was challenging was they said, here, you do a dissertation on a subject that deeply interests you, but it's also something that you find difficult in your work. And so
Hmm.
I did that about non-linear movement of time in Alice Munro's work.
Hmm.
And I learned how to handle time in my own work. So I guess that when you really dissect other people's work, you also find out methods that you can sort of evolve and adapt into your own. So those were sort of interesting things that happened.
So what was it that what were the insights that you have into your writing process other than just the timeline bit? Was there something about crafting a story? I mean, there must be in all book clubs have aspiring writers. So all lot of readers are always aspiring writers. So maybe this is something, this kind of an insight could help the ones who are, who would want to start writing.
I would say that a couple of things. In the beginning, when I was writing, I probably would not have mapped out the entire story. I would have started with, an interesting premise or an interesting character and then kind of gone along with it. And now I don't. I have very, very clear structures, about what's going to happen in the first act, the second act, the third act. And then I don't have to follow that guideline, but I do know where the story is going so that I don't find myself floundering in the middle.
Mhm.
I also, I mean, and some of this I learned at Oxford, some of this I learned at Goldsmiths. And the other thing was to look at other people's work and see, there was this one question that we had in one of our books. The book is by George Saunders, is why begin a story on this particular day? Why
Hmm.
do you pick that day to start a story?
Right.
And I guess the answer is that that is the day that and that from that day onwards it has to frame a change, some sort of change in the character, in the story. But that is, you have to answer that question. Now there are no rules in writing. Sometimes you may not have that, but it's nice to at least know that there is this sort of structure that you can go to. Writing is like throwing daggers up, and then hoping that one of them doesn't stab you back in the eye. Here, at least you have some sort of a target that you are aiming at. That's pretty much it. It still doesn't change the process, but you feel that, you have certain trajectories that you can point those daggers at.
So it kind of gave you more of a process and more of a like a technique sort of a thing, more of a way of every time you hit like a block, because the mapping was there and you knew where you were heading, you could kind of go through the block more easily. Would that be an easy way of putting this answer?
Yeah, it could be. Also, it helped me analyze because a lot of our work in Goldsmiths was analyzing each other's work and our own work. It
Mm.
also, by looking at problems in other people's work, you can also spot the problems in your own work.
Mm.
And that was very interesting. But again, to me, going back and forth in time is something that I really value, and I got a lot of ways of doing that.
So how do you think, now that you are analyzing your own work, how do you think you have evolved from the first book to this book?
The first book was Mrs. Funnybones. They were a compilation of my columns. So those were completely different. And I think in my second book, I was quite pleased with some of the stories. My third book, I felt that I was under a lot of pressure to be funny. And this was self-inflicted torture
Mhm.
and also what the world expected. And I think I caved into that pressure. So when I look at it, I think I was trying too hard on every page to have a joke, to have more metaphors, more similes. And with this book, I decided that, despite other people telling me, editors, publishers, I was true to the story. If there is dark humor in it, but it has to service the story. There was nothing that was forced or interjected just for the sake of it.
I the Capricorn in me has to be honest. I have to say this is my most favorite book from all the ones that you've written so far. I really like it, and I love the way there is humor, but I love the dark humor, and I feel the potential or the what I've seen, Tina, be it on sets, in social settings, as a friend, I see more of that in this book than the others because this is more real. because while to a lot of people through your columns or everything also there is a Tina which can be which is quick and sharp. There's so much of depth in you, and that there are layers to you, and there's a lot of depth to you, and there's a lot of sensitivity in you, which you really try to hide very hard. You hate to be called sensitive.
I hate it.
He hides it, and all this prickliness basically is because underneath is this really sensitive person. And I think that person has been very, very obvious to me always. And I sometimes wonder why can't the world see that sensitive side of her? But I think this book has that sensitive side of you so much more than it has ever
I,
been.
I also think that for a very long time, my guard was up, and I was not interested in letting people come in too close. I thought I was protecting myself.
Mhm.
And it was just with time that I realized that I wasn't building a fortress, I was building a cage. And I slowly started lowering my guard. I think really the pandemic also changed that for me. It was during that period of time that I realized, maybe for the first time, that I don't really have to depend only on myself. There are other people who are dependable. I always prided myself that I want to be dependable but not dependent. And for the first time, I said it's all right to depend on other people. And if they let me down, so be it. If someone takes advantage of me, so be it. At least they are happy. And I think now my guard is a lot lower than it used to be, and probably that translates into my writing as well.
It's for the first time you're letting people really, maybe I can see that because I've known you for so long, but first time you're letting people in to the vulnerable side of you. And there is that side. And um, you are, like you said, very, very fiercely protective about that side, and you block
Yes.
that side out. And for the first time, you're letting that guard down. And for me, as a friend, as someone who has known you, I think this is a very, very interesting time in your life, because I'm so excited to see what is it that you come up with now, because you are beginning to open yourself out. And I know that you as a person have so much more to you and so many more layers. So it's going to be very interesting to see what you come up with next, which we will want to know. What are you working on next?
I took a sabbatical for 2 months, which was which was basically the equivalent of having a nervous breakdown because I'm not very, very good at not doing anything. I once, I was talking to my therapist and she said, well, just try doing nothing. And I said, what does nothing mean? Things you enjoy. I said, can I make a list of, the things that I can do when I'm not supposed to be doing anything? And she said, no, can you stop making your to-do list? Um, I am working on something that I think is going to be a novel,
Yeah.
and I am working on a script as well. So
Mhm.
I'm dividing up my day, and of course, I'm doing the columns. So I'm dividing up my day where in the morning I'm working on the novel, in the evening I'm working on the script. I am trying to do something which is out of my comfort zone and sort of larger in nature.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's right now too early to say.
It's
But
already sounding exciting, Tina.
I'm working. But
It's
that's how, and you're the same, if we're not working, we don't feel that we're actually living. I envy people who can just say, oh, you know what, I'm going to go to the spa and then go for lunch. I want to be like them. I'm just not capable. It's
And
not like I don't want to be, I do, but I'm not capable.
yeah, I hear you completely. I think both of us have been working since we were so young. We both
Yeah,
have had people depending on us, and we've always felt that we need to be strong, and still do. We feel that we need to be strong and we need to be there for them, etc., etc. Sometimes it's not like they want, the people around us want us to feel that, but we take it
exactly.
upon ourselves. So
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. But like I said, I'm already excited about what you're writing. I'm already excited about the fact that you're going to write something bigger and something which is a complete novel, because I can just see you getting there, and it's wonderful to see you in this stage. Please remain like this, Tina. It's beautiful. I like this one.
Oh, okay.
Ooh,
But that
I'm
doesn't mean that
ready
we
for a
that
talk.
doesn't mean that I'm going to become boring and we're not going to
Why do
have
you think being
crazy
vulnerable?
times.
Why do you think being vulnerable is
It's
boring?
not being vulnerable is boring. I like entertaining myself. And then if the world is entertained as well, then great. I mean, you keep saying that this sharp sense of humor, whatever, it's primarily for me. I don't know if you remember, but once we went uh, to have lunch, I think, at the Marriott, and there was this God man and his fancy green car outside.
Yes, I do remember that.
And then I was like, I have to take a picture with this car. And then he took a picture, and you took that picture of me standing by that car, and I put it everywhere. And I kept saying how I'm such a devotee. Of course, sometimes my humor does get me into trouble. So the
And I told
Godman's
you it will get,
henchmen started calling
and,
me.
and I did tell you it will get you into trouble.
You told me. But then the henchmen started calling me, and eventually my poor husband was called by the authorities because they actually thought we were his devotees because I was, going around saying all this just to entertain myself.
And like I've always said, I get that sense of humor, but most people, especially they don't get this sense of humor at all. I thought it was hilarious, and I did tell you at that time that it's very entertaining. We are laughing about it, but I said, Tina, you will get into trouble with this, and you did. But yeah, but that's you, and that's
Such
why
is
we
life.
love that. Yeah, yeah. Tell me, who are the writers who influenced your writing style?
I think, well, I read extensively. I read across genres. I particularly love science fiction. So,
Yes.
but science fiction, I don't think influences me in a way. It influences my perspective. It influences the way that I look at the world because I've been reading science fiction since I was a very, very young girl. And so I started looking at everything around me with this sort of view that if there are aliens with tentacles falling in love with one-eyed creatures, what are we squabbling about religion and color and race?
Yeah.
And instead of being my world being small and my vision being small and sort of looking at my clan and my tribe, I was, looking at universes with that much diversity. So I think that though I don't write science fiction, that perspective does filter into my writing in some form. In terms of specific writers, I mean, Rohinton Mistry, I read everything that he writes. And, I think I'm a big, big admirer of his work. Alice Munro, like we spoke about. Arundhati Roy, The God of Small Things. I read 3 pages every day. I keep rereading that book again and again, and it never ever gets old. I will annotate, I will, kind of memorize lines from it. And I read that book, I read it aloud because I love the sound of those words. And I guess a lot of other, and then of course I have all my favorite Ted Chiang and Ken Liu and all those science fiction writers that I read. So yeah, I don't think there's any one genre that or one, kind of author that I look up to. They all seem to have an influence on my work because they influence me, yeah, as a person.
Okay. When you think of your childhood, which is that one book that comes to your mind? That book means childhood.
I think it was the Faraway Tree series, and
Oh my
that's why
God, Tina! I see that every time too. Oh my God.
I think it was, yeah, I think that's what comes to mind. And that's why we probably named our candle company the Faraway Tree because it had that resonance.
Yeah, I love that book too. And it
Hmm.
always, it's just actually such a beautiful book of inclusivity. I always felt the way everybody was so different, so unique, and yet they were all living together. It was one of those books. When you were talking about science fiction again, both of us with our love for science fiction. There's so much of today and the day that we are living in feels like what we started reading is
Yeah.
already happening, and it just feels like what felt like was dystopian is no longer dystopian. So if we are living in dystopia, then what do you think the future is?
Well, when I started reading science fiction, they used to talk about having, devices for communication in your hand. They would talk about AI. They would talk about all sorts of things. But everything that I've ever read in science fiction sort of led to one thing that we would get isolated. Either it could be because of a virus, it could be because of pollution, it could be because of aliens. But at the end, we would end up destroying ourselves and get isolated in bubbles. And I fear that we are heading that way if things don't change. The other thing, of course, that's there, and we haven't come to that stage yet, is colonizing other planets and sort of human adaptation to those planet. So because of the differences in gravity, we would have to have modifications to be able to live there. So yeah, I'm hoping that maybe, I'll get to see that too. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, that would be exciting. Would you ever like to go into space?
I think I let many other people go into space and let their, rockets explode before I send myself up. So yeah, you guys experiment, and then, by the time I'm about 99 and I'm ready to pop it anyway, yeah, I may, I may take
Might
that
as well
ride.
then go there. Yeah, because it scares me too. I mean, I'm not very, I love reading science fiction. I love the idea of going into space, but not me. That somehow kind of holds me back
Yeah.
always. So I always wondered that, you like science fiction too, you like the space and the whole idea so much. What was your view on it? So interesting that you would also wait for others to figure
Yeah.
this out. So yeah.
And also for me to kind of sort of finish my lifespan.
Hmm. Okay, that's fine. Um, so we've spoken so much about you. There's something about Welcome to Paradise that I really want to touch on. And I love your sense of humor. Yet in Welcome to Paradise, there's this underlying kind of a thread of sadness. And it's not like I cried, but my throat would get heavy and I would want to put it down sometimes and just kind of be with it. So, I mean, all the women are different, yet there is something so similar. So, what would you say about this underlying sadness first from you? I want to know. Was that
It's
intentional? Was that what was it? What was going on in your head at this point?
It's very strange, but a lot of people said this, that they read it and then there was this sadness and they had to put it down for a while, process that, and go back to the story. Um, I think I'm at a stage in my life that, I'm seeing loss. We are all seeing loss. We kind of, some of us have lost our parents. Unfortunately, some of our friends have gone, aunts, uncles, grandparents, they're all gone. And if you have a parent, you're kind of looking at it, you can see the finishing line and you know it's coming. So I think that sort of view of mortality has
Mm.
seeped into this book because I'm at that stage where this is something that, I was kind of looking at. And very tragically, in the last few years, two of my friends lost their children, young children.
Mm.
And I think it affected me very deeply because they were close friends. One was particularly close. And all of that, all of those emotions, those experiences kind of filtered into the book as well. Because at the end, when you're writing, it is from your mind, it's from your soul, it's from your heart. And you can't keep your own emotions really separate from that.
I know you've dedicated this book to your Nani,
Hmm.
and in what way do you think you're paying an homage to her?
I think that there were a lot of stories that she told me when I was growing up, and she told me about her childhood in Satpati. She told me about this story, which is Jelly Sweets, is basically my great grandmother's story, how she got married and she had a son and she lost her son. And then she kind of, had a mental breakdown
Mm.
and her husband divorced her. And then she married her neighbor who, and had a whole, I think, a dozen children with him. And he treated her like she was an absolute goddess because he also had his own share of losses. And I remember her telling me this, and that it's not in the book, but he didn't want her to do any work. And when she would hear his car coming, she would leave the kitchen, quickly clean her hands, sit on the swing, and pretend to read magazines so that he would think that she had really, not exerted herself at all because he didn't want her to. He thought that she was very delicate and he looked after her. So I thought that in all of this, there is hope. There's always hope that things can turn around. And I
Yeah.
thought it was a beautiful story. And when my grandmother passed away, I also felt that I'm the last one who remembers. And after me, there will be no one else who will have these stories. So I had this need to put it down,
It is one
and
of my
preserve
favorite
it.
stories. In Welcome to Paradise, Jelly Sweets is one of my favorite stories. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know it was so close to your Nani's story, and that's amazing. Yeah, I'm looking at it in a different way, but yeah, yeah. Which out of these stories was the easiest to write for you?
I don't know about easy, but I think Let's Pretend stayed in my head for a couple of months. But when it was down on paper, it was probably the simplest because I had the entire shape. I knew what was going to happen. I knew that the story was circular in shape. You start at a party, you go into the past, and you come back to the party. So because I knew that, I think in terms of technique, it was the simplest.
Was this the first story you wrote in the book?
No, it
It was the
wasn't.
first.
I think, well, Jelly Sweets is the first story that I started, and
Mhm.
that was about, many, many years ago, probably 5, 6 years ago. And it was the last story I completed. So how do I tell you which was the first story?
Okay, we can leave it at that then, I suppose. Yeah. There are a lot of there are a lot of personal experiences, anecdotes in Welcome to Paradise. What is it that you want the readers to take away from this book?
I think we are inundated with this notion of perfection. Books, movies, the media, they keep telling us about the perfect life, the perfect body, the perfect love. And I want people to look at this book and feel that it's absolutely fine to be imperfect, to have imperfections, to embrace imperfections. It's like having a little garden. Sometimes some flowers are wilting, some are growing, there's a dry patch, but it's still beautiful. So I think I want them to accept and embrace imperfections. And hopefully, through this book, they see that and have a new perspective.
Yeah, you're right. All the women in this book, actually all the characters in this book have their imperfections, and yet they're so likable with their imperfections. And I agree with you completely. The day I could accept the fact that I don't have to be perfect, it was liberating. And I felt like I started enjoying life so much more. I started enjoying people around me so much more. So yeah, that was beautiful. I loved the book, and it was. I'm going to have the everybody on the book club write into me and tell me what is it about this book that you've liked the most? What is the takeaway now that you've heard what was Twinkle's process on this? What is it that you have taken away the most from this and who your favorite characters are? I'm looking forward to hearing that from you. Tina,
Mm.
so wonderful to have this
And
chat.
I'm going to see you for coffee, lunch, or something like that next week.
Definitely, definitely. I'm looking forward to you coming back into town. I'm looking forward to catching up. And let me say, before we end, I want to say thank you so much because you have really opened out. And I know you, Tina. I love this new side of you where you're okay to be vulnerable. I'm liking that side very much.
Being vulnerable, I'm just being myself. It is what it is.
No, no,
It's a
Tina. I've known
it's a
you for
journey.
too long, and I like this. I like this where I've known Tina who just when she starts getting defensive, protective about herself, will come up with a joke to break that situation.
Yes.
Just when she feels vulnerable, or if not even vulnerable, just like little softer, it's like, how can I be soft? I need to be tough. And she'll come up with she'll come up with something which is trying to be funny and she is funny. So, people do get distracted around her. Everybody around her, not me. I've caught on to it long back. And but I see that difference, Tina. I'm honestly telling you that I see that difference, and I'm really appreciating it and enjoying it. All the best. I'm so looking forward to your next book because I think your journey is just beginning, just the beginning.
Thank you, my love. And I shall see you soon. Take care. Bye
Bye.
bye. And thank you, all of you, for watching this. I hope you enjoy the book.
Love you, darling.
Take care.